Alright, let's start with the most obvious point. The economy of this wipe is completely broken, at least if you consider what the game looks like now versus what we think it should look like on completion. And BSG's changes should be focused on trying things for next wipe and nudging slowly closer to what they want the final game to look like. There are many things they want to add before we see 1.0, but they should be as bold as they like to get the required information from testing to see what works and what doesn't, and ultimately to improve the quality of the final product. One point that I don't see raised all that often is that the economy seems broken in a released game sense, but right now if you've been playing regularly since the start of the wipe, it's more like playing creative mode where you can buy what you like and it doesn't really matter if you die. The real question though, is this okay for a beta? New players still get the full Tarkov experience, as it will probably take at least 6 months before you really have a good handle on the game, unless you're playing like 4 hours plus per day, and once you understand what to do, how to make money, survive and kill other players, and maybe even get Kappa eventually, you're definitely out of that new player mode and can contribute to the broader discussion of what the game should be like in the future. This means that many experienced players get to use all the guns, attachments, visit all the maps, complete all the quests, and playtest many of the other important elements for a beta. Basically, they will be experiencing a large proportion of the game's functions and features, even though the overall framework isn't finished yet, which arguably is the most important idea behind doing a beta in the first place. That being said, the economy itself does need testing, which brings us on to the next wipe. I don't know when it will be, but this next one will be much harder than the current one with everyone starting again, but with all of the hideout related changes in place, and hopefully graphics card durability that comes into play too at some point, which will balance one of the biggest free money sources in EFT being the Bitcoin farm. This alongside the Bitcoin price nerve and potential economic shocks like the fuel test recently, hopefully the economy won't get inflated quite as rampantly as in the current wipe and we can move towards a more stable economic model. Players, myself included, will always use these features to get an advantage, i.e. right now it equates to pretty much infinite cash to max the hideout, but it is quite right for BSG to get rid of these free money sources, and by that I mean money that you get given with no decision making or risk involved. This makes the game more boring, causes experienced players to feel like there is nothing left to do, and removes what I feel is the Tarkov experience. So the Tarkov experience for me is summed up by the journey is more important than the destination, which is definitely true for Tarkov. That M4 that you've pieced together over multiple raids lovingly from parts in boxes and down players has a story behind it and means so much more than one that you just snap together using preset Legos in 5 seconds for some rubles. This is why people love the start of the wipe so much, because everyone's scrapping around in Struggle Town and there's tough decisions to make like, do I buy something to make me perform better in raid, or do I upgrade my hideout for greater rewards later? Plus adapting to using what you find and having to make do with just those items. I don't want to go into it at length here, but this is why I really think having a hardcore character, which is separate, would be so cool to see how it plays out, i.e. very basic traders and no flea market. For the new players, try not to wish yourself forwards into the endgame too quickly, as Tarkov is best experienced with the full fear and paranoia, jump scares when getting one tap from nowhere, and heart-pounding adrenaline of a fully laden miracle extract against the odds. That aside, given that we do have the flea, and traders that provide nearly every weapon and attachment in the game, at some very good prices I may add, Tarkov only really has money as a way of keeping score. However, having a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean that you're a great player. Contrary to popular opinion, Tarkov isn't really supposed to be about PvP. It's an important element of gameplay, sure, but it is not designed to be its core mechanic. The skills required to make a lot of money in Tarkov are not the same as those required to be good at PvP, and you could argue that in many ways right now, going for PvP is actually detrimental to your overall cash situation unless you really are super good. This is because of the way the game is set up, and probably the most efficient way to make money on its own is hatchet running, unfortunately, simply because you lose nothing when you die and the way the secure container functions. But it's an incredibly boring playstyle for a lot of people unless your only goal is for your ruble count to go up. It is also naturally hated by many players because it is counter to what most people would think of as the way Tarkov should be in inverted commas, because to not value your own life in a hardcore FPS is a bit strange. The best way in my opinion to have fun and make money right now, closer to how Tarkov was originally designed, is through budget runs, and this can be done at any level and is arguably better at higher level now because, as mentioned before, you can buy many things such as rounds cheaper from the traders than from the fleet. With good rounds and an efficient kit, you can take down players and scouts when needed, but if you spend most of your time in raid prioritising loot, you can get rich fairly quickly. This is probably the closest playstyle to how Tarkov was originally intended in my opinion, prioritising your survival and extracting with a bag full of gear, carefully selecting which fights are worth taking and leaving when you're either outnumbered, outgeared or just don't want to lose your loot. On the furthest end of the spectrum, the Chad style of only using the best gear and prioritising PvP isn't profitable for most players on its own due to the gear differential between yourself and the players you fight against, as well as the find in raid system hard nerfing all PvP loot. but it is entertaining and is often the end stage for people who are experienced and don't have a great deal of other stuff left to do officially other than just get better at fighting other players. Once you have near infinite money from a combination of the hideout, cheap trader gear and ideally dying less, interestingly your own life again becomes less meaningful in some ways because you can just alt-click on a whole new kit out of your inventory and load in again. Gear fear is a thing of the past because the losses incurred in PvP are more than offset by the hideout, and the individual weapons, loadouts and loot also lose their meaning, which in my opinion is mostly a symptom of how easy it is to make money when you're level 40 plus with max traders, maxed hideout and the fact that you can buy anything you want at any time. For Tarkov to be the most interesting game that it can be, it needs to create scenarios where players have to make difficult choices at every stage of the game, whereas the end game right now means that you can just have it all and not even remotely worry about it. This results in a lot of players getting bored, but also isn't how Tarkov should be, in my opinion. Hard choices make a game interesting. These players are also the ones most likely to run into desync, audio and other server issues, which adds to the frustration of playing the game at the top level. So once the content flow dies down a little bit, these frustrations come bubbling up to the surface as there's not much else to talk about. Are desync and audio issues annoying when they get you killed? Yes. Are BSG aware of the problem? Also yes. Are they going to do anything about it? Well, probably, to the best of their ability. We'll just have to wait and see and hope that their best is good enough. Me personally, I don't see the issues quite as much as you would think based on the general public discourse on social media that you see, but I'm also not playing for multiple hours per day like some of the top streamers, so I might be insulated from this somewhat. There is also a lot of complaining about various player behaviours, whether that be rats or crabs being the most recent, hatchet runners as mentioned before, or extract campers. To this, I would simply say that no player owes any other player anything in Tarkov, and as I also highlighted before, PvP is not the core mechanic that EFT is based around. If someone wants to play real slow and catch out PMCs stomping around, then don't let anyone stop you. Everyone knows that sound is one of the single most important elements of enemy identification in this game, and if you give that away for free and end up dying, and there are so many ways that a fully geared player dies quickly these days, then I'm afraid that's on you. Tarkov is not just a point-and-click skill-based shooter, and I feel that players who rely on their FPS skills to brute force their way out of bad tactical situations just do the game a disservice when they complain. Even extract camping, which yes is pretty much the most annoying experience that you can give to someone else in this game, but it's really up to BSG to do something about it if they want to. Otherwise, everyone is free to do what they want within the confines of the game itself as they see fit, and to maximise their own success, however they define that and however they want to achieve that goal. I'm all for constructive criticism, but it really does need to be constructive. Complaints on their own are just a waste of time, to be honest. There is so much that could be done with this game, and good ideas of how to improve the experience should definitely be encouraged. So keep making those posts with suggestions, and keep filing those bug reports to do our little bit in making this game the best it can be. I'm excited about the future of Tarkov, and I wouldn't have invested so much time in it both as a player and an upcoming content creator if I didn't think there was a great future ahead, both for the near term in terms of the factory expansion, lighthouse and streets, and whatever else the next few years will bring. So take it easy, have fun, and remember, at the end of the day, it's only a game.